We need to reduce plastic waste in the environment.
That's why at America's beverage companies,
our bottles are made to be remade.
Not all plastic is the same.
we're carefully designing our bottles to be 100% recyclable, including the caps.
They're collected and separated from other plastics,
so they can be turned back into material that we use to make new bottles.
That completes the circle and reduces plastic waste.
Please help us get every bottle back.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Thursday, May 19th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Carl. First up this morning, news broke yesterday that the Department of Homeland Security is, quote unquote, pausing the formation of the Disinformation Board that Secretary Mayorkas had announced at a hearing sort of out of the blue a few weeks ago, and obviously engendered a lot of criticism and blowback and discussion about exactly what this board was going to do, how it was going to function. Nina Jankowicz, the person who was tapped to lead that board, has also resigned. She was, a lot of videos from her past social media came up about, things that she had done and said and even sung in the past, Carl. So what do you make of this?
Talking about the Scary Poppins video.
What do we make of this story? And is it a good thing that DHS is pausing this? Is it as Taylor Lorenz wrote yesterday in the Washington Post? Is this the administration capitulating to right-wing smear machine? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, you can sort of count on some people to take the wrong take every time. So some of the criticism doesn't surprise me. But in my mind, there was a question of whether the Homeland Security Department even had the authority to do this. It's certainly not contemplated in the enabling legislation, which I covered in the aftermath of 9/11. It seemed unconstitutional on its face. It immediately became dubbed the Ministry of Truth, which is literally from George Orwell's 1984. And then they appointed a deeply unserious and partisan person to lead it. So it couldn't have been rolled out worse. It made the rollout of Obamacare look like one of the most efficient things government's ever done by comparison. It's a disastrous and dangerous idea. And it shouldn't just be Glenn Greenwald and some of these libertarians and free speech defenders who noticed how awful this was. This is not the role of the government. Is not to decide who gets to talk. That's a foundational concept in America.
Right. And so we'll see. I mean, there were some reports that this Disinformation Board is just merely paused and there will be a reboot of it in the future, perhaps without Nina Jankowicz in charge of it. But we will have to see whether the administration really is reconsidering its position on whether this is a good role for the government to play or not. Certainly the administration argued even up until last week that it was a necessary thing and a good idea until they sort of, reversed course. Let me ask you another question, since we talk about the power of government and what governments can and should be doing, Carl. Biden announced last night that he is invoking the Defense Production Act to try and deal with the baby formula shortage. We have talked about this before. It is something that became sort of a crisis situation, despite the fact it had been percolating for months. And now he has invoked the Defense Production Act. This is something that Trump did back during COVID to produce the ventilators. Recall from the early days of COVID. Is the Defense Production Act, is this a good use of the government and their authority here to try and solve a crisis like this?
Well, Tom, I don't mean to sound like a small government libertarian, but this law was not envisioned for either one of these emergencies. But you'd be hard pressed to find an American who thinks it's not, a good idea. And the idea that the greatest nation on earth, the most robust economy on earth, can't produce baby formula is shocking to people. And I think from a political standpoint, I think it's something Joe Biden needed to do. I think people were asking him to do it. The reporters were asking him at the briefing room.
Right.
And, you can't see with people's masks on, but you got the feeling some of them were young mothers themselves. Some of these people asking questions. In my case, I've got a couple of baby boys who are grandsons who need baby formula. This is something that people do look to government to solve. And maybe we shouldn't look to the federal government, but we do. And I just, during an election year, to have a president revealing questions like this, kind of a no-brainer, I think, from a political standpoint. And I think he did. I think it was smart of the president.
Politically, I agree. It was smart. And the question is just exactly how much what sort of tangible effect that it will have. But certainly when we face situations like this, they want the government to fix it. They want the government to do something. I mean, it's the same situation with, gas prices reaching record highs and potentially, according to JP Morgan, could go to $6 a gallon over the summer.
Oh, that's Tom, it's already $6 a gallon in California. I noticed that last night. So it's already
but the national price will go to perhaps $6, which is crazy. And of course, people are going to be saying, fix this, Congress, fix this, Mr. President. And at
Tom,
that point,
previous presidents used to get on the phone to CEOs, and it was called jawboning, presidential jawboning, and tell them to get their act together. Now we expect a more sort of formal and orchestrated response, and so invoking the Defense Production Act, it makes sense, but Americans don't have a clear idea of why prices are rising as fast as they are. I don't have a clear
I thought it was
idea.
Putin.
Well, the president keeps saying that. Doesn't make it true. Maybe that's another reason why they paused the Disinformation Board. They were going to have to start fact checking the president. That was going to be awkward. But energy prices, stressed around the world, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine is part of that. But this was happening. This huge spike was happening before, and it's happening. And food prices. Why is food going up? And so we still have supply chain issues, and it turned out to be a lot more complicated than ships from the Far East being stuck in Long Beach Harbor. It's all the way along the line. The production of semiconductors, integrated chips, is still lagging. So this economy is stressed, and I think anything the president does to show that he understands what working class Americans are going through is a positive for him, and he probably needs to do more of it.
We had a story on the site yesterday, Carl, about a guy who runs a little business, I forget exactly where it was, but that he had, because of supply chain issues and whatever, he runs a restaurant. He had chicken wings on the menu. Pre-COVID, they were $13.95. He was charging $27, at one point $34. He said he had to take it off the menu. He had to put market price on the menu because the price of chicken wings had gone up, the price of transportation, the price of oils, everything that he used to make the chicken wings. He said he might take them off the menu altogether because it was just too crazy. And that's just, and I tweeted, I want, Elizabeth Warren to force the government to make this guy fix his prices at $13.95 so I can get my chicken wings. I was joking, of course, but do you think there will be a rising sentiment for the kind of intervention that progressives like Elizabeth Warren are talking about, which is fixing prices? I mean, we've seen that movie before in the 1970s, but she is clearly out there saying the FTC should be authorized to go in and tell companies what they can and cannot charge for services and goods in this economy.
Well, look, economic illiteracy on Capitol Hill is not new. But the point that what you just invoked was the wage and price controls of the 70s. They were an abysmal failure, and they made the problem worse. What's happened, 50 years later, there's a lot of people who don't remember that. And so it may be a lesson we have to learn all over again. But again, if you're a working class person, a friend of mine had a painting job that he priced out, a small little job in his house, and the contractor told him a few months ago, $450. He called up the guy and said, "How about now?" It's $900. He said, "What are you talking about? It's the same job." But he said, "Well, my guys come from a long way. They've got all his prices increased. The paint is increased, the gasoline, the labor, everything, and this is not sustainable because pretty soon then you're Venezuela, and inflation does have to be put under control, and nobody quite knows how to do it.
All right. We'll leave it there for this morning. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief, and this has been the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Thursday, May 19th, 2022.
We need to reduce plastic waste in the environment.
That's why at America's beverage companies,
Our bottles are made to be remade.
Not all plastic is the same.
we're carefully designing our bottles to be 100% recyclable, including the caps.
They're collected and separated from other plastics.
So they can be turned back into material that we use to make new bottles.
That completes the circle and reduces plastic waste.
Please help us get every bottle back.